Hello, everyone. We're going to be continuing along in the Gospels here. We're coming up on the end. We only have just a few videos left. And so we just finished the last discourse that Jesus had with his disciples. He was on his way to Gethsemane, the garden there, and now he will be in the garden. And so we're going to be reading primarily in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but in keeping with chronology, we will read John 18:1. And so we'll read that first. Instead of jumping back and forth, I am going to just read you through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and we'll kind of discuss their similarities and who adds a little bit more information each time, because this one would be pretty difficult to toggle as it jumps back and forth every couple of verses. But it is important when it comes to the chronology to really get the perspective of each one of the gospel writers. And so let's begin John 18:1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples. So that was finishing that discourse there. Over the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. See, here, if you're not reading the title here, we don't know that that garden is actually called Gethsemane yet. Um, John doesn't give us that information right away. So now we're over here in Matthew 26. We'll be reading 36 through 46. And of course, all these references will be in the notes below. So, verse 36. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, which are James and John, but here we're just told the two sons of Zebedee, right? And he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." So remember, when we're given specific places, dates, times, etc., that's good information to highlight. So as we come back through our studies in the future, we'll have that little reminder there. And so we're told here that he had all of his disciples, right? But then he took Peter, we'll learn then James and John. A little bit farther in. And so, verse 39, he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, "What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter in temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, a second time, he went away and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done." And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise and let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." So, like I said, we're going to be discussing several of these concepts as we go along. Um, and so we're going to continue on into Mark and see what he has to say, and then into Luke. But one thing to recognize here in verse 46, actually, and verse 45, right? Um, Remember, he says, "Behold, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners." And so that confirms what I was telling you back in John 17, that he said his hour is at hand, right, is near, that that hour is the hour of Satan's opportune time, right? And so that's what he just told us here. He clarified that is the time, right? It's not the hour that he's going to about to be crucified, right? It's the hour of time that he's being betrayed. So let's jump on over to Mark 14. We'll be reading 32 through 42. Then they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here a while, I pray." And he took Peter, James, and John with him. So here he calls out James and John, right? And he began to be troubled and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch." He went a little farther and fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will." Then he came and found them sleeping and said to Peter, "Simon, are you sleeping? Could you not watch 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away and prayed and spoke the same words. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. Then he came the third time and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough. The hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." And so, again, it's just about perspective, right? And we get a little bit more and or contextual information, right? um, Something to see here, other than, like I said, he actually says James and John in verse 36, he says, "Abba, Father." So, Abba is actually the Hebrew word for daddy. That's the type of, so a small child would say, like, "Abba, Abba," right? That's daddy, daddy, right? And so, this just kind of shows you the uh, type of what I want to say, because we know the kind of reverence that he has for the Father, but the kind of um, pleading almost that he's doing, a with the Father, right? Daddy, Father, all things. Like he trusts completely, entirely in him, right? But nevertheless, he trusts that not what I will, but what you will, right? Um, and here in 37, second half there says, "Could you not watch 1 hour?" So that's a timeline that we're given. And we're told that he goes away to pray 3 times, each time saying the same thing. And so we can deduce here that it is 3 hours of praying. Remember that the last several chapters have happened since the feast, right? That Passover feast, the Seder meal, otherwise known, um, time has passed consecutively. There hasn't been days in between. And so they're exhausted. They have been awake all of the day before and all through the night. And Jesus, um, you know, God rest his soul, he's about to be awake even through all the next day, along with John. And so these guys, this is why they're tired, right? They're not just out sleeping on the job, they're not lazy, right? They're exhausted. And that's also why Jesus points that out as well, right? And so let's jump on over into Luke, and we'll be reading Luke 22, 39 through 46. And then I will talk about a couple things with you. Sorry, readjusting my neck here. Okay, so um, verse, I said um, 39 through 46. Yep, there we are. We're actually at this top portion here. I'm thinking like the arrest in Gethsemane. Okay, 39. So coming out, he went to the Mount of Olives, as he was accustomed, and his disciples also followed him. When he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." That Sorry, bud. So here he doesn't even tell us that it's Gethsemane, right? It's actually, but if we put all of our information together, we learn that Gethsemane is a place on the Mount of Olives, right? And something else we're told here is that as he was accustomed, right, to go. And so this is going to matter here soon. So let's continue to read and we'll come back to that. Okay, verse 41. And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's throw. And he knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. Then his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. When he rose up from prayer and had come to his disciples, he found them sleeping from sorrow. Then he said to them, "Why do you sleep? Rise and pray, lest you enter into temptation." And so, um, each one of them, like I said, have given us cotext to one another. And so, let's talk about a few things here. So we know that he had all of his disciples with him when he entered to the garden. So all of them are there. Well, the 11, right? And so they're all there. But then he chose Peter, James, and John to go on um, a little farther with him, right? And so um, he he has the three of them here, right? And so they went a little farther. Well, then over here we're told, excuse me, in Luke, he had the all of them. Let's just kind of paint a picture here. So all of them kind of at the entrance, and then he took three a little farther, and then he from them, right, from them, the three that he had, right, he was withdrawn from them about a stone's throw, and he knelt down and prayed. So Jesus continued on a little bit farther than the three that he brought with him. Okay. And so that just kind of paints the picture of where Jesus is and what he's doing here. Okay. And so um, let's talk about the cup. And we spoke about this in class. Not everybody was in class with me that day. And so here is an interesting thought and perspective that never actually um, occurred to me until I was studying in this Bible college class here. And so um, I actually asked the question for you to ponder, which is, what do you think the cup is that he's asking the Father to possibly remove from him, but not his own will, but the Father's be done, right? And so, what is that cup? And most of us have either assumed, thought, or been taught even that um, Jesus, the knower of all things, right? The deity with God, the Father, right? Who knew what would happen, still reached out to his Father in a manner of um, a type of hope that is, almost like um, fear and with almost, I don't, for the lack of better words, like an anxiety about what's to happen, right? Like even though he knew it was going to happen, right, that he still prayed to the Father, right? Like if it doesn't have to happen, please don't let it, right? But if it does, I trust you anyway. And that's kind of the perspective that has always been taught that I have understood. And now having a different one, it actually makes far more sense because that was meant to be this kind of uplifting or reassuring type of message to us that if Jesus prayed that prayer, already 100% knowing, right, then surely we could, not always 100% knowing what the will of the Father is, surely we could pray that prayer as well in the sense of the context of our life that, Lord, please let XYZ be so, but, not my will, but yours, which we should be praying the not my will, but yours. But this is actually not what's particularly happening here. So let me paint this picture for you. It says, if you will take this cup away. So, and I'll give you a reason as to why it's not that. Okay. Um, this cup likely represents the separation, okay, from the Father. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more during his crucifixion. Um, but the first 3 hours on the cross, he bared the sin, right, or excuse me, the wrath of man, right? And the second 3 hours on the cross, he bared the wrath of God. Okay. And Jesus eternally, right, from the beginning of all of man's physical time on earth, but eternity before that, right, forever, has always been with God. He has never been separated from God, right? And especially in the form of son, right, has never been separated from father ever. How many times cohesively can we say him and me and him, us together, one, I am one, I do what he says what we do, right? Like there's no separating ever. Okay. He has never been separated from God, right? And then we even talked about just recently in the last chapter study, right? That what is eternal life? To know God, right? To know the Father. That's eternal life. So, is that knowing, that relationship with? Okay, Jesus has never existed outside of that. But for 3 hours, okay, the second 3 hours on the cross, he's about to come under the separation from God. And that is the only way that he can truly bear the consequence and weight of our sin, because the consequence of sin is death, right? What is death? Death is separation from God, right? Christians, good, God fearing, Christ loving Christians die, right? Our body dies, right? It is spiritual death. Jesus is still alive when he experiences this spiritual death, okay? And so it's a very hard kind of concept to understand. We'll talk about it a little bit more during his crucifixion time. But for now, this idea that Jesus isn't praying that he's not about to be turned over and crucified, right? From the beginning of the Gospels, we're told that Jesus himself actually says, his word says, it is for this reason I have come, right? And so he knew. Jesus knew before he came to earth what the reasoning would be. He knew that he was coming to accomplish this task. His entire messianic ministry is to establish his kingdom, right? But with the understanding that he is going to accomplish this particular task. So this is not foreign to him. He is not there. We can't contradict the word, right? And the word is truth and Jesus is truth, right? They're all cohesive as one. And so he's not spending the entirety of the gospels telling us that I know the reason that I came, and now all of a sudden that it's, he's in the hot seat. It's, well, if you could, could you possibly take it away from me? That's not what he's asking, right? He's crying out with a deep sincerity of, I've never been separated from you. I have never, right? He's never been and experienced that kind of what's going to be taken on as death, right? That spiritual separation from the Father. He's never had that. And that is going to be the worst thing that one could ever experience, right? That Jesus is going to take on for us. And so that we never have to experience it, right? Remember, we're always speaking of a spiritual death. All humans will die. Always. Your body will physically die, right? But we will experience a physical death with the spiritual resurrection, right? And so we get to live twice, being born again. I've talked about this before, right? But those who don't accept Jesus Christ, right, they get to die twice. Their body dies, they live on earth, their body dies, but then their spirit gets eternally separated from the Father. They experience that spiritual death. And so the type of agony that Jesus is about to experience, he's not talking about the crucifixion, which was the worst historical way known to man to die, right? He's not talking about the crucifixion. He's not talking about not going to the cross and giving his life for us. That's not what he's saying, right? He's saying that, right, like I can't even fathom the idea of being separated from you, right? But not your will, excuse me, not my will, but yours be done, right? I know that this is why I've come, right? And so, um, hopefully that gives you a little bit more clarity on what it is that he's talking about here. So, another thing to point out while we're talking about it is this, and only Luke records it. And of course, Luke is a doctor, right? So he's going to record for us a little bit more of these physical attributes. And so he tells us here in verse 44, right? And in the type of agony he's in, right? He's in so much agony, okay? That his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. This is actually a real medical condition. You can be so stressed and under such great duress, okay? The pressure of the stress can literally cause the little capillaries, okay, in our veins to burst, okay, and thus causing blood to leak out like sweat. And that is what's happening. So remember, we started off with this sorrow and groaning that he's already feeling, right? Entering into Gethsemane. And then as he prays, it's increasing more and more, right? And he's thinking and dwelling on this separation from God. And it's so intense. He is literally sweating blood. And so let me double check here um, that I have touched on all of the parts here. And so um, let's see. I wanted to um, make sure that um, okay, so the reference that I was talking about earlier, it's John 12:27, says that he won't ask to be spared, for he came for this hour, right? He always knew. So that's that cotext that helps you out. I've spoken of the cup here. That specific hour that has come that he's talking about, Judas is approaching. And so that's what we were speaking of there. Isaiah 49, 1 through 13. I am going to put that in the notes below. We're not going to jump back and read that right now. But God is using his word, okay, through an angel to comfort Jesus. And we can learn more about that at in Isaiah 49, and that section that I'm talking about here is actually, remember, it's only talked about by John when it says here that then an angel appeared from heaven strengthening him. And so that's that reference to Isaiah 49. All right, guys, that wraps up this video. And in the next one, we'll be talking about the trials, the religious and civil trials of Jesus. So I'll see you again soon.